Traveling to Uganda at first seemed to be an event of the distant future when EDCP 318I first started. Every class we had both semesters until spring break consisted of the clip students containing our anxiousness. The content that accumulated over our classes from topics such as traveler versus tourist, catalytic roles of outsiders, the role of foreign aid, and asset-based community development really became useful to us. But when time came around for us to start addressing travel plans, scheduling travel shots at the health clinic, and actually packing our bags, the whole concept of us traveling to a nation in Africa slowly settled upon us. And before I knew it, we were in a country that I will probably never visit again, a country so different yet similar to ours, and a country that will stay in our minds forever. Having no expectations is the one concept that I held myself back upon, as not to develop any false hope that could lead to future disappointment. It would be a cultural immersion where I would learn more than I ever could within a classroom, and thus our 10-day spring break turned from visiting a third world nation to us discovering ourselves. When we think of Africa, most Americans think of savannas, bony children, poverty, and maybe even Rafiki. But this is far from the misconceived images that may be implanted in our minds. Within Ugandan society, there are stark differences in lifestyle, culture, and living conditions. On one hand, we have elaborate shopping centers, coffee shops with exquisite delicacies, casinos, royal palaces, and world-renowned banks such as Barclays. And on the other hand, we have poor ghettos, unemployment, and clay homes that break down every time it rains. And these districts are just often minutes apart from each other. And believably, the same is true even in the United States, where we can drive from a posh neighborhood 1 minute to an area with a crime rate of several homicides per day. We can see that within American and Ugandan societies, the same community problems are prevalent, just on different scopes. On a lighter note, we see similarities between pop culture, music, nightlife, and youth gatherings that are much like what college students often engage in the United States. When discussing music with my host family, I find out that my brother and I listen to almost the exact same artists. Music seems to be a universal language, as does politics. With serious differences between pro and anti-Museveni supporters, this resembles much of our Democrat GOP tensions here in the United States. What struck the most peculiar of all during the trip is how two countries can be continents apart, yet almost the same. The example of this is Muammar Gaddafi's mosque in Kampala. It stands out above all other structures and is centered at the capital, with large signs and posters announcing who it is memorialized after and built by. And right outside the mosque we see beggars performing their routine, and at the same time we see vendors and stores lined along the streets, instead selling diamonds and costly commodities. This is when the disparity became most evident to me. The gap between the rich and the poor is unbearable, especially as we venture away from the city. Masaka was a mini version of Kampala, yet more cultured and homogeneous. Even our camera crew agreed that life was completely different between the city and the capital. But no matter where we were in Uganda, we could always relate to the similarities and differences that helped identify who we are and what we can contribute to this world. By making such comparisons, we were humanizing an experience that was surreal in most ways. Planet Earth is still the same, no matter where you go. We saw the best and the worst, from dining at a fancy restaurant at the Oasis Mall in Kampala, to seeing an abandoned mother with 2 children living in water deprivation in Chanamukaka village. There always existed that balance between a comfortable reality and a harsh reality. The presentations given to us by Moses and others made me realize the severity of HIV and AIDS in Uganda. But once again, we must keep in mind that we see similar rates for HIV and AIDS worldwide. In fact, DC has one of the highest rates of infection in the entire nation. But at the end of the day, I question if Ugandans or Americans are better off. Jamar and I were almost in tears when we left our host mother. It was a home away from home for us with a level of love and care I have only felt when my parents sent me to India. Similarly, the bonds and the relationships that were built here did not involve technology or doing homework or partying. We did not have power for the entire week, except until our last night, when it turned on for about 2 hours. We had no running water except for a toilet that had to wait 30 minutes in between flushes. But none of it compared to the bonds that were formed and our exposure to what life in a developing country is like. For me to have enjoyed an opportunity where I was cut off from technology and free from most luxuries I would have taken for granted back at home in Maryland, this trip was unforgettable. The relationships I could make out of a genuine nature is the most rewarding experience. Not only will I keep in touch with FSC staff, my host family, and even those in Kanamukaka, I will cherish them and the stories I tell to my family and friends forever. This is a trip that will never be forgotten, for I have witnessed the flagrant dichotomies and similarities between different aspects of society, economy, and culture within the East African nation of Uganda.